Today is the 26th of September 2019, and the time in the UK is coming up towards 8 p.m. And we have Peter Mitev and we have Marybeth Armitage and Richard Armitage meeting together across the internet to engage in a discussion around our viewpoints of spirituality, our experiences, and to share some ideas. And so, Peter, how about you starting the discussion?
Thank you. Well, I guess I'd like to start with speaking a bit about what I want, where the direction that I'm heading in life, the things that excite me and turn me on. So what really turns me on is seeing other people and also myself feeling this way, feeling that sense of like, wow, or like an idea clicking, or just that kind of open-chested, like empowerment feeling of freedom and not being chained by just previous things that limited an individual, and that lightening, feeling light, and being free and not shackled down by things and ourselves. So that's what I'm really interested in. But
yes, well, likewise, powerful interest for me there, and this ability then to make progress in created that kind of state of being, that sense of wellness, that sense of enthusiasm, that sense of upliftment, and to be able to apply that into a practical way in life, in the face of circumstances that sometimes we find quite challenging. So, and the ability to work, engage, play with a group of people, like-minded people, and to see that we can, between us, come up with those kind of shared ideas that are going to literally uplift and empower us in whatever we might want to do.
So, in the work setting, for example, how would you say somebody that really doesn't like their job and they don't necessarily like the ethics behind their work environment and things like this, what would be your sort of advice, let's say, to bring in more of that kind of joy and upliftment and empowerment in their lives for themselves?
Very good practical questions. Very often I think the answers that people can give a very concrete suggestion of a course of action, and I feel that what is desired is really a change in the level of being. So if one is being the person who's in a situation where you're not enjoying the job, then you might move to a different situation, and that might help. But you do take yourself with you, and if you have a habitual way of settling into ideas and thoughts about circumstances, then if it's possible to start to realign those thoughts and the way they link and generate feelings within the body, then there's an opportunity for not just a change of circumstances, but actually within the existing circumstances, you can start to experience them differently. It's altering a viewpoint. It's taking a different perspective of a similar situation. And so I find that the first pointers for me are not something concrete like trying to change the relationship with a boss or change the ease with which I can do the work or something. through some practical steps or learning some new mental approach on how to get through get through to-do lists. I've tried all those things. Worked a bit. But if it's possible instead, from my perspective, to start to tune into how I prefer to feel, who would I like to be in that situation, and how would that person feel? So then there's an opportunity to reach for a lightness which kind of lifts one out of the patterns. I find I can get caught in mental patterns, and literally it's kind of like lifting a little bit out of that, holding a lighter, a slightly more joyful, a slightly more jokey kind of space, and looking at life progressively more from that space. So then you can come and have a look at the same situation you're in, but find other ways of engaging with it. And also, I think it's that light energy that one can hold within oneself, which then other people can attune to. So if you're dealing with a situation, but you're dealing with it with seriousness, everybody tunes into that seriousness. And everybody feels, well, okay about that maybe, is, perhaps rational, but there's a certain slight heaviness to do with that. Whereas when you can actually kind of lift it to a lightness, and then you engage with a few ideas, and then you go back to the lightness, so you're not too stuck in it, then there's an opportunity for people to, it becomes a more joyful experience. You enjoy it a bit more. And in that space, still, ideas land more easily as well when one's in a lighter space. So I think that opens up, the idea. Whereas if one's in that kind of more slightly heavier space, which tends to have a slightly judgmental feel to me, it's like, oh, I've already decided this is difficult, this is boring, or uncomfortable, or I'm tired. I'm not just observing those things, I'm actually stating them, which is putting a little bit of creative energy into them, and they tend to persist. So if I can get into the habit, and we've been doing some work with you, of course, and some other engagements, this working with just stepping back into a slightly light space, and then every now and then pulling back and going to the light space. And then as that becomes a habit, then I think things can change. So that's a starting point. Marybeth, what would you say?
Going back to the beginning question?
Yeah, going back to the good question Peter's raised, yes.
Well, again, for me, I think I'd like to start with, I follow things a lot the way, Peter was saying. One of the things that I really notice and what really lights me up, I mean, and it's almost a definition in and of itself. When that power runs through your body, when that joy and that excitement, and you're just it, and when you can come into contact with people that just add to that, and the dance and the play with that, you both step into that and grow with that. That's the most wonderful thing that there is, and the more that we can. The more that we can do that with each other and bring new people into that, I don't know that there is anything better than that. To me, that's what Rick is talking about here in the lightening our vibration and becoming a different person. When we have that life flow of energy running through us in that way, we are a different person than we are when we're tapped into other energies. So for me, again, if Peter, if you're the person asking me the question, because that's the situation you're in, I would answer it one way. But if you were asking me for a friend, I might answer it another way. So my first question to the person would be or to whoever is, do you want to change? Are you happy with where you are? Are you aware that you want to change in how you feel or how you look at it? And I always start with really where the person is in the moment. Because really, a lot of people don't want to change where they are. And there's nothing wrong with every one of us being right where we are, even if other people think, oh, if I was in that situation, I wouldn't be happy. So then I tried to get them out of it because I wouldn't be happy if I was in that. But the truth is, I'm not in that situation. And I don't know how they're responding to their life where they want to be without actually asking more questions first. That would be my start. And let's say that they did know that they wanted to get out of it, that they did recognize within themselves, no, this isn't where I want to be. I got myself into this situation. How do I change it from where I'm at? And I agree with all of what Rick said. I mean, those are all wonderful ways to start to make these changes that we all want to make as we go through life. Sometimes it's easier to pick another aspect of our life that's going really well, where we can feel that higher vibration, where we do like who we are in those moments. And what comes to mind as I say that with a lot of people might be if they have a pet they like to play with, or if they have young children either in their life or they know of. But sometimes that feeling of that love that we have for, either a child or a pet can bring up that natural vibration in us. And if we can take those moments and we can start to anchor how we feel in those moments, then when we walk into our workplace, we can call on that anchored feeling, and we can bring that feeling into the workplace with us, and then we can watch the workplace start to change, because we're actually a different person bringing that in than who we are if we don't make that conscious attempt to do that.
I really, really resonate with what both of you said. And remember when I first sort of started supporting myself, I dropped out of school and I was delivering pizzas on a bicycle, and I had my own place. And I remember everyone around me telling me, your life is clearly shit, obviously. And kind of like Marybeth said, maybe you don't want to change. Maybe you really like where you're at. Because I was going to this pizza job and I was just having so much fun. I was on a bicycle all day. You go in, everybody that's working there was complete family. We're just joking around the work. It's play. It just passes so quick. And then I get to go home and study all the things I want to study and explore all the things I want to explore. I was just this free person, and everyone was like, what? And that really resonates. You can actually totally bring that in and enjoy wherever you're at. And like how Rick said, and Marybeth as well, actually, that changing yourself and then going into the same situation can transform the situation. Because I can remember times where I've gone to work grumpy, and I've just been grumpy all day long. And everyone's just grumpy at me because I'm just this grumpy dude. And then
It's true.
really anchoring it, I'll spend a really nice day with my girlfriend, and we're just dancing and we're playing and we're having this great time. And then I have this in me, and I'm just this playful. And the next day I go to work and I'm just kind of I'm on my motorbike for an hour, and I'm just thinking about this. And I'm just in a playful mood, listening to my music. I'll just sing out loud on that motorbike. I hope other people can hear me because it's nice and loud. Everything just happens, and it's just so joyful. And you can just bring that energy through and totally just be more playful in it. And I like what Rick said about sort of being light, but then also going and doing work. So being serious, but then constantly pulling back for some lightness, so that nobody gets bogged down with structure and work, but there's a lightness there to almost lubricate and allow the flow of the situation to take place. And that really resonates, because when the work is really just attack, it just quickly you just get exhausted. Whereas it becomes this complete play, and it's all just this fun thing that you're doing together when there is seriousness mediated by lightness. And it's not, seriousness isn't a bad thing, because you need to practically do things, but then it's that, or that's not seriousness, that's stress, and that's just a different ball game. And you can keep it, and then that lightness makes you feel better, and those around you feel better, and then that just amplifies, because like we feel each other, right? And that's just beautiful. Yeah.
I can feel it as you talk about it. Yes, I totally agree. Yeah. Another question that I find interesting there is this question of me. People seem to know who me is. And I don't mean this man, I mean as ourselves. You say, oh, well, I this, as though there's some kind of predefined package, and that's what it is. I think it helps to realize that the essence of us is a lot less defined. And it is as though, well, let's take an example. If a kid is going out on a football field, in that moment, that kid is being a football player and having the experiences and the emotions and the excitements and the challenges and the disappointments that go with being, or just bored, depending on what they like, football or not. But they're having the emotions of that being that kind of football player. And you come and you move into a different role, and then you have a different set of feelings and responses and emotions about that. But you're not the definition. That's having that experience. It's like you're stepping into it and you're stepping out. And this also has to do with that lightness and that more seriousness. That more seriousness is like diving into perhaps a particular piece of work. You're being the engineer, you're being the builder, you're the carpenter, or you're working on, in the moment you're focusing on that, but then you're stepping back out. And I think it's that stepping back out brings you back in touch more with the kind of core undefined element. And from that space, you can then make a new decision about what you'd like to do now, what you want to engage into. And it's great fun engaging in things and to engage very full on. And sometimes it's good to be stepping back from those, and then one moves into a different role. Perhaps even a different phase of life. There used to be phases of life, but I think that we are so fluid now that we can actually move through roles and experiences and viewpoints can actually change by the week. And a thought process can land, and that's interesting. And if I experiment and play with a different way of looking at it, you might have, maybe you don't get on with a particular person, they've always been irritating or whatever. And then instead of focusing on them being irritating, maybe you take the viewpoint, well, what it is within me is it necessary for me to experience that energy because I'm near this person? Or maybe there's something mastery where I can actually work with this energy and get a viewpoint that treats it differently. So now, the Dalai Lama came up with a very nice statement that I always enjoyed. He said, if you want to practice compassion, he says, you need a good enemy. It's easy to be compassionate, isn't it, with everybody you love, If you want to practice compassion, you need a little test there, don't you, to actually say, oh yeah, okay, here's someone giving me a hard time and I can work with compassion. If that's what you want to be playing with, I'm not suggesting one needs to be compassionate to one's enemies, but it's this alternate viewpoint that one can take of things. And there is this great flexibility then about me. At a broader spiritual level, that extends, of course, into simply stepping out of the body. So it's like one steps into the body to have a general human experience, and then there are a number of sub-experiences and so forth. But So this principle of stepping in and then stepping back, and then stepping into a bit of definition and stepping back, I think is quite common. And the mind, the tricky bit, because change, I haven't found change necessarily to be very easy. It's becoming easier because my mind's been telling me how I should change and what I should do. And it does get me to do some different things, but always the energy is the same. It's this mind telling me what to do. And that's figuring out a new way for me to do. Oh, you need to fix it this way, or fix it that way. But always there's the same fixing energy, which is, and the problem is the fixing energy. It's where it's like the mind has got locked into a certain way, and actually it doesn't know the answers anyway. So, but when you can step back, then there's this flow of intuitive ideas that can start to come in. And if the mind, if one can retrain the human mind, which is a bit voracious in what it wants to do, to actually work in coordination with a more relaxed flow of ideas, then there's a different potential and also a speed of development that I see happening. So people can start to change quite quickly. I think in the past, you might live a whole lifetime really in one simple role, whereas now, we can be changing roles and effectively having the equivalent of several lifetimes in a single lifetime because of the ease with which we can now move into different experiences presented by the technological advances that we have in our world at present. So the opportunity for a more fluid engagement is there.
That really brings to mind something that a friend of mine, both a mentor and a mentee, we had that on that. She's only 17, but she sort of realized that, like, most of her life, she's been really involved, and like we're all just really involved with like the personality structure. And then as she was really starting to get into spirituality, she was really practicing awareness and mindfulness and being aware. And then, but that also was another step. So there's these two things. So, and then after that, she found that the next step is not just being involved, not just being aware, but being involved awareness. And through your involvement, awareness, like you're making a cup of tea and you're not thinking about it, you just make it and you're aware of it at the same time, and this process unfolds, and the next part of the process just happens without an attachment, but you're deeply involved with the experience. And if you're deeply involved with the experience, only then can like progress happen. But when you're deeply involved with the personality construct, then, and there is no awareness beyond that or a third person view of that, so then the change can't happen. And recently I remember thinking about the Christian concept of sinful, and salvation can only come through Jesus Christ. And I realized that that's true. And I was like, whoa, it's true. Because I figured all people are sinful. What sinful means is actually originally a Greek term, and it's an archery term, where if you would aim at a target and you would miss the target, that would be a sin. So what does it mean? It's a failed experiment. It's an aiming at something good or divine or perfect and missing, and that's just a failed experiment. So your personality is this thing that you're experimenting with, and each iteration gets better and better. And then, so it's not an evil or immoral thing. It's just a thing. It's a play. It's an attempt and a thing. Like if you see a child learning to walk and you see it fall over, no one's going to be like, "You're deeply sinful. You shan't."
Yeah.
And then, so people are sinful, people are failed attempt, or experiments aiming at divinity or perfection, but then they are in themselves imperfect and whatever, and then salvation can only come through Jesus Christ. Well, the exoteric belief is that Jesus Christ is this dude that lived 2,000 years ago, and I think he's probably a cool dude that did live 2,000 years ago. But the esoteric understanding, or the feminine perception of that, is that Jesus Christ is your awareness. And that personality structure surrendering to your awareness, only through that can salvation arise. And, right, so Jesus Christ, your personality surrenders and says, you know what, I'm going to stop trying. I can't do this. I need your help, awareness. Like, something beyond me that is infinite and immovable and never changing. And if you recall within our own experiences, our awareness is no different than when we were 5 or 10 or 12, but our personalities certainly played many a game along the way. Experiment that's just iterating, and we're never like doing it in a way where this is the perfect way. It's just another iteration. And it's this experiencing and growing, evolving thing. But being deeply involved with that, it's quite constricting, because it feels, well, if you identify with it, you're this thing that is not permanent. It's gonna die because it's an iteration. So there's gonna be another iteration later on. But if you understand that you're aware of that, it's quite light, and yeah. And then that can progress and be surrendered within that.
Marybeth?
Oh, I found that really interesting. It's I don't know, thought processes that I don't normally think of myself. So that was really interesting to watch that and agree with all of it. So it's a fabulous perspective that you offer there.
Mm. It triggered a thought in me. Again, it's this definition of me as being this part separated out from that higher level of awareness. So at this level, I only kind of know what I know at the kind of human level. But opening to this other space, I find it helpful to think of it as not necessarily not me. In other words, perhaps, the bigger part of me is part of that. Anyway, and there's a part of me that's coming down here and is having this particular experience for reasons which maybe I've got some idea of. Let's feel into it. Maybe I'm not too clear why. But then, instead of me having to do it all myself, because, I literally like... well, I think I'm lazy, but actually I'm not really fundamentally lazy. But I do like ease. We do like flow and ease. So if you can just kind of say, okay, there's a big part there, and actually it's willing to play and support me. And perhaps all I really need to do, the idea is that I need to come here and make some decisions, as though it's like an energy that wants to play. It wants to play, but it needs an idea to play with. It doesn't just want to go play by itself. It's an energy which takes pleasure in empowering the experience. And then my thought process can start to switch to the idea that I'm not really having to engage in hard work and such. That's perhaps not the role of human beings, although that can be where we seem to play, and if we get involved in more serious things like survival and so forth, that perhaps we're more like directors of energy. There's all this energy that's been made available, and what would we like to create? How would we like to play? And then focus on directing that flow of energy into creating the kind of things that we'd like to engage in. And it takes away, it just makes the whole thing more playful. And I find that things flow more easily from that space. So I then I kind of like a doctor. I don't want to say that something is true, because everything seems to be true from a particular perspective. So I'm not looking for kind of ultimate truths here, but certainly working with that is very empowering and refreshing. And Marybeth has a lovely expression, which is, doing things in perfection and ease. So perfection is always nice, but has associated with it that it's really difficult. So you see what you do is you cheat. You say, okay, perfection. I don't want that perfection that's hard. I want the easy one as well. So come on, energy, give me perfection, show me perfection, and show me ease. And then we'll apply it to something. And that's what should we apply it to? I don't know. We can do these. What should we apply it to? And between us, we come up with an idea of something that will be fun to do.
What think of it?
Marybeth used to work with perfection and ease, and she still does, but that was a key phrase for her, and a key phrase for me was effortless abundance, because I felt that coming from a limited attitude to life where there's scarcity and working against that, I was feeling that what I wanted to see was this flow of abundance. But then if abundance means you just have to work really hard, which is a common interpretation, so that's, taking Jesus' words, he said, look at the lilies in the field, they toil not, nor do they weep. So having to work 18 hours a day in order to experience a touch of abundance is, perhaps isn't necessary. And in that change of mindset, then abundance can actually come with an effortlessness. Then it causes you to pause from going down an old worn path and to allow new ideas to land. It's this opening where new ideas, and the new ideas that land bring with them thoughts on how to implement them. It's like the instruction manual's actually in the energy. So you don't actually, and this is where I think you were saying, one can sort of get in the way oneself of these flows. But if you open to that flow, you can start to direct energy, and then the energy knows how to implement the kind of ideas that you're looking for. And it can become a very graceful process.
Something else that brings to mind is slightly back to the question of like in somebody's job and they didn't like their job and whatever, is a way to kind of to bring ease into that situation. Mm-hmm. Is that work, I feel that some people or somebody asking that question might go to work and not want to go to work. So then you're already doing something you don't want to do, rather than sort of taking responsibility for a decision to go to work, in the sense that I want to go to work, and then having that enthusiasm. And that brings to mind the concept of perfect. That would bring an ease, and then you'd be able to do this job in a more sort of perfect way. But then there's a concept I want to bring through, which is of fear and excitement being the same thing, and that when you're really afraid of something, it feels very different than when you're really excited about something. Like, from our perspective, it feels different, but what the situation is that we're in a bubble of things that we understand, or things that we feel safe or comfortable with, and then out there is chaos or the unknown or the unconscious and that which we are yet to become comfortable with. And when we go out into that, but we don't want to, and it feels forced upon us, we get scared. But when we go out into that, is the same exiting out from that bubble. We experience excitement when we want to do it and we choose to do it. So it's almost the difference between the way somebody experiences one situation and the way somebody else experiences the same exact situation is the willingness to participate in the situation and to be involved in it, and just being sort of scared and not right. And when you're willing to participate, then there is an ease that comes through, and which also allows a perfection to simply take place and just manifest spontaneously, because you're choosing to be involved and and willing to face these new experiences that might be unexpected or whatever. Whereas in a situation where we didn't want to be involved in such a situation, it would be very hard for anything to be easy, because then it's very hard work, if it is work, or whatever it is that we're doing. And it's also probably not going to end up perfect, because we're unwilling, we don't really want to do it. Like, so it's not going to be perfect. Kind of a random little...
That's an interesting take on the fear and the excitement. I have often found with people, one of my favorite lines, I have several favorite lines, but there's such a fine line between fear and excitement. I now have people come tell me as they describe it, they're afraid of it. It's a fear the way they're describing it. But the whole way they hold it and the whole way they're talking about it, by the time we get done with the conversation, they realize, oh, I was actually really excited about it. There's almost a fear of being excited. There's almost a fear about that might be too good to be true, or a fear of being successful. But underlying all of that, there's this excitement about, oh, what if it could really happen that way too? So I've always found those. But, I would have said it a little different. Like, you don't always feel it differently in the body, but sometimes we put different words to it, thinking it's fear when it's really excitement. But I always love it when people come up with something like that, and I can see that fine line between, it's like, oh, just step right across it then. Some fears I think are really fears, and they're not something that you can easily step across. But other ones I find to be just a very simple thing to just point just a little bit in the other direction, and all of a sudden you can see the whole vista in front of you. It's fun.
Thank you so much for what you just said. I feel like I just I've realized that when tackling somebody who's in fear, my sort of approach is, well, this is good for your expansion, face your fear. Whereas what you do is you give this light approach and you just gently transmute it into excitement, rather than just being like, this is good. You understand that that's therefore sort of good, or good for their expansion, and then you take them on that journey and gently transmute it into excitement, rather than thank you, because that's a much better approach.
Very cool. You're welcome. Very, very fun.
I have seen her do that quite a number of times, and it's beautiful. People are quite surprised because they're not expecting, and suddenly they realise they're feeling a lot better, and they've just shifted a bit, and suddenly now it feels exciting.
It's one of those things too, like going back to what you said at the very beginning, that thing that really lights you up. That's it. When you can step people into that excitement from wherever they were, it's a very beautiful feeling, because you're in the feeling. It's not like you give it to someone. It's not like you created something. It's like you really have to be that to allow people to, I don't know, do that dance, to step into it with you if they're not there to begin with. So just takes us back to what lights us up and what makes us happy. I love to play that way. That's one of my joys. Not a different one than what I said to begin with. There's just so many ways to do it. There's so many ways to step into this energy. There's so many ways to turn it on. And there's really not a difference between turning it on and turning me on. They're one and the same. That's who I am.
Really resonates so much. I remember a time when, and I've also noticed in my own experience, anytime I take somebody through an experience, or like somebody has, like I take them on a journey, I have to go through the journey myself, and I have to experience the healing myself for it to be sort of given. Like,
very beautiful. Well, the time moves on. 8:30. So my suggestion is that there might be some closing comments, but we might possibly bring this session to a close. So,
Yep.
Peter, any kind of words in rounding up?
It's been a pleasure talking with you guys and getting yeah. Thank you.
Well, for my part, thank you both. Actually, it has been quite fun. So,
Yeah, feels like a good beginning. It's been really good.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter. Good to get to know you.
Thank you, Peter. Beautiful.